In 2011, the middle of 2011, things got really quite depressing in one way. What had been a bad year, sort of from summer to summer, if you like, turned out to be bad financially for me as well. And I remember the day that I bought the last purchase for Granville, and it was a sort of spontaneous purchase, really. I wasn't planning on buying any more birds. I'd been round to my parents' house, and I'd done a very subdued and quite miserable video blog, in fact, detailing all the woes of the fact that I had no money, no friends, popularity was low, I couldn't get my birds to breed anymore, all sorts of things. On my way home from there, I popped by the pet shop to buy some bird seed, and I found a little canary, and I'd never had canaries before, and I wanted this canary. It was quite expensive, and he wasn't completely yellow. He was like, well, somebody described him once as a dirty tennis ball. It was sort of like a ball of fluff, really, ball of yellow fluff, but with sort of black sort of streaks on his wings and his front and on half of his face. And I bought him, and I called him Jojo after one of my friends in the US who I had managed to carry on with, I suppose, after the demise of the forum, because of course I made a lot of my American friends through that forum, and by 2011 that forum had, fallen apart. Everybody had gone, it was a wasteland, but I had managed to sort of keep up with a couple of my friends from there, and so my canary was called Jojo after him. And Jojo was the last bird that I bought at Granville, of course, because later on in the summer I was talked into, by my parents in fact, talked into downsizing, into trying to get rid of some of my birds, which is my one regret, because in the winter of that year it suddenly looked like I was going to move and have an aviary, and of course I just got rid of most of my birds. So I had to start all over again with buying a lot of birds. There was not much continuation, and what did continue, was sort of over by the middle of 2012 when Jens the Budgie died, and only one bird remained from that period where I used to have a room full of cages and all these different birds, and that was Jojo. One of the problems with the aviary, there are two main problems that I've discovered with an aviary. The first is, it's only really fun for half a year. It's fun to be able to go outside, listen to the birds sing, watch the birds having babies and teaching them how to fly and stuff like that. But that only happens for about 5 months of the year. The rest of the year is dark and cold, windy and wet, which means it's a hassle to clean out. I never see the birds because they're always sort of inside the bird room asleep. It means that I have to do a lot with closing down the aviary and opening up the aviary every morning to protect them from the elements. And you'll find that a lot of my birds, if they are going to die, tend to die between November and February. It's the time where any of them who are not particularly well during the year will probably be killed off by the elements. The second, so hang on, what was I saying? Oh yes, that was one of the problems with the aviary. The second problem with the aviary is it allows me to have more birds, but in having more birds, they're at arm's length, if that makes sense. There's a lot of birds in my aviary that I don't really know in terms of, you know, their little characters, their little foibles, and they don't know me really, because to them I am just somebody who gives them food and water. They don't interact with me like the birds interacted with me when I used to have them sort of singularly on you know, a table all the time in your house. You could watch them any time, night or day, and they interacted with you more. I guess that's because of the old adage that if you have a single bird on its own, it interacts with the human that's looking after it. If you put two birds together, they only interact with themselves and they ignore everything outside. The birds in my aviary are semi-wild, basically. They're not as domesticated as they would be if they were inside, kept inside. Because Jojo had been kept inside for about 6 months before, you know, he went out to the aviary, he was able to acclimatise, and he survived the acclimatisation process. And he went on to live for about 3 odd years out in the aviary. And then this morning, well, yesterday really, I discovered that he had died. And part of me was sad because, you know, he was the last of his kind. He was like one of the last birds that I felt I knew very well, and felt like I interacted with quite a lot. But also because he was one of the things that I suppose, one of the last things that connected me with Granville, and maybe even connected me with the Forum. You know, whilst I don't mind so much, you know, cutting all ties with Granville, cutting ties with the Forum was quite a hard thing to do. Having said that, I also wonder whether it's going to be, whether now things are going to be a little bit, you know, he was bought at the start of a really, really, really difficult time in my life, which hasn't been over yet, it hasn't finished yet. And I'm rather hoping that maybe, you know, this signifies also a sort of change in my life in that respect as well. Perhaps now there is no need, I suppose, for a sort of pick-me-up or something that symbolises a sort of a pick-me-up in times that are hard, because perhaps we're now going to have good times, I don't know. I'm clutching at straws, you know, maybe I'm trying, you know, superstitiously to see signs that are not there, in the hope that, you know, things are going to get better, I don't know. But I thought I would take this blog and mention him, use him as the subject, because unlike some of my other birds, he will be a real loss. I will really, really miss, particularly next summer, Jojo not singing his little heart out in the pouring rain. So yes, let's cheer ourselves up now by looking at the birthdays. We don't actually have many birthdays this week. We've got John Humphreys, Steve Taylor, Hazel Smith, Carrie Sunderland and Joseph Galloway. That is all. So I hope they have many happy returns and eat lots of cake. And I won't be here next week, because next week is the quadricentennial blog. So I shall bid thee farewell until the week after.